Erik Darling is here. Dun, dun,
Hello.
dun. Howdy, sir. How's it going?
Pretty good. So I had a tough time getting in, and I kept getting that error no matter which link I clicked on. So I went and I looked in TaskMugger, and there were like 4 instances of GoToWebinar that had little red X's over them in the task list. And I killed them off, and they kept coming back, and eventually they all went away, and then I could join. I have no idea what happened. No
My virus is working.
Keep him out.
God, we haven't even talked or planned anything about, so we got the class tomorrow that we haven't talked about yet. We still have, we get to do the compressed pre-con tomorrow.
Woohoo!
Dun, 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 dun.
We should probably talk. I made I made a bunch of changes based on feedback and other stuff. So
What kind of stuff did you change?
well, the decks are shorter in nature, and the Blitz query store deck no longer tries to stay relevant to the parameter sniffing deck because it doesn't really jive telling a story about it. So query store is just kind of its own shorter little thing that talks about its uses and why it's different, and then parameter sniffing kind of goes off into its own deal.
Well, now that we have since we're running a webcast tomorrow, so Erik and I did this exact same session at Summit. Now that we have the webcast, all we have to do is whenever a module finishes, we get to take a bio break. We get to just go off and let people walk around, it's so much harder when you have a room with 350 people in it.
Yes, because they all come to the front.
Armed with things, yes. And so, Richie, you were also watching the AWS reInvent stream. So out of what you just saw, what were your big things that you were excited about?
I haven't really, well, the big things is anytime the dude, Jaffe went in and started spewing company names, all these companies blah, 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 are using it, I just zoned out. I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't care about what companies. Just tell me what the product does and how I could use it in my company or other, clients that we have. But I don't care who's using it. I mean, I don't, maybe small-minded, managers think that's a big deal, but it doesn't matter to me. The other thing is that they had a house band, and he was interrupting his keynote so that the house band would play clips of a song. Yeah, so it's like, and now let's get the house band to play something from George Michael, and they would play like bits of Freedom 90, and I'm like, what is this? I am so confused. I mean, where are the supermodels? They should be in the video. I don't understand.
Here's Claudia Schiffer.
And then he did it again, and he did it for Congregation for the Foos, and I'm like, you're ruining it. You're ruining everything. Stop. Just stop with the music things. I mean, you don't understand it. But from an announcements perspective, the serverless database is way up on my list. I mean, having an Aurora instance and you don't have to pay every second that it's up is amazing. I mean, if it works and I don't have to wait 30 seconds for it to spin up, and I'm just at the most I'm waiting 5, it could be a game changer for smaller apps that don't need continuous database pooling. It's just up there, and even some architectures. Now we could start thinking about, hey, I don't have to go to the database anymore all the time. I could do some other, fast storage and then pump it into the relational whenever I need to, and not have that standing up all the time and paying for it. Not like Aurora is expensive. It's relatively inexpensive compared to everything else, but that alone, now we're seeing a lot more. It feels like it's a second wave of maturity in the serverless model. Hey, now I got my database serverless too. Ooh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the thought of being able to pay by the second for a database, when I'd never even thought about that. That's incredible. It's amazeballs. And so it comes out in MySQL compatibility first, and then what, Postgres is next later in 2018?
Yeah, I didn't even read it because I was debugging some unit tests. So I broke the build again, Brent. So
is this the part where you pretend like you're working? Is this the part where you pretend like you're working?
Well, actually, I've got some guys in Asia that are actually doing the work, and I'm just copying it. And
that works. That works.
So I've been playing Breath of the Wild continuously for like the last 2 weeks. So That's why I'm offshoring all my work. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We'll go ahead and get started with the questions. Thomas asks, he says, I can answer most questions about being a mid-level DBA. Great. We'll put you on the webcast next week. We're going to outsource you. Outsource this work to you.
We're out of here.
Yeah. Richie's going to go play Switch. I'm going to go surf the web. He says, I can even answer some for senior positions. How good do I need to be at T-SQL in order to call myself a senior DBA? Oh, that's a great question.
Does T-SQL alone make you a senior DBA? I don't think so.
No, I've seen senior DBAs that suck at SQL, and
Yeah.
one of these two guys is like that.
Yeah.
Me. Yeah. I mean, I can write a query, but like I'll sit in on every Itzik Ben Ghan session that he ever does, and probably 2 out of the 3 things that come out of his mouth are I'm learning again. He's probably said them before to me, but I'm like, oh, that's right. Oh, that's how the sliding window function thing works. But we're in same thing with our mastering index tuning class right now that's going on. A good chunk of the DBAs don't know how to write T-SQL. You know, that they're trying to figure out how to make queries go faster with indexes, but you do not need to be good at T-SQL in order to be a senior DBA, quote unquote.
I'll give you another great example is Robert Davis. I have never seen him write a query in my life, but if I had to hire an infrastructure guy, I would be banging on his door so hard.
Yeah.
Like, no, this has to work all the time. You get over here and sit.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you need to know T-SQL intimately, you're not a DBA, you're a database developer. So that's the difference. Now, if you can take a look at a query and a query plan and then tune that, I think a DBA should be able to do that. But not necessarily, you know, hey, I need to take a look at my table structures and then and figure out how I can get this intricate query and then pump it out. A pure DBA doesn't do that. If you are a DBA that does some database development, that's one thing. But a senior DBA shouldn't have to understand that. It's great that you do, but you don't have to.
Michael says, Robert is good at T-SQL. I'm sure he doesn't suck. Yeah, no, and I know I've seen a function that he writes in order to parse fn dump db log, but it's just like if you were going to go write a big, huge reporting system, Robert wouldn't be the guy that you would call. Itzik Ben Ghan would be the guy that you would call for that.
Yeah. If I needed the fastest way to like traverse hierarchies or solve weird problems, Itzik all the way. If I just want the most reliable 24/7 system in the world, I'm paying Robert Davis $1 million a year or whatever else he needs to, keep him sitting at that desk for that long and on cocaine. Stay awake.
Steak. I know you like steak.
There you go.
Thomas follows up and says, wow, that makes me feel better about my future. I've been focusing on HA and DR. Yeah, that role is called production DBA. Production DBA is when you make sure that the server is on, it's accepting queries, that there's no corruption, that it's backed up, restorable, etc.
Yeah, you're doing the patching, you're doing the DR plans, you're doing all that stuff that's fun to some people.
Not to others. I'm telling you now.
Not to some people.
Yeah.
No.
Tom says, I read that you no longer have to wait until Service Pack 1 comes out with Microsoft's new rapid release model. Well, that's true. There's no more Service Pack 1 at all. There's only cumulative updates. He says, would you recommend SQL Server 2017 for production at this point?
Hell yeah. Someone's going to find those bugs.
And it might as well be you.
All right? That they just released Cumulative Update 2 last night, and there were like no showstoppers in there. It wasn't like SQL Server 2017 ceases to work if you run a query. It was like, oh. So, I would just say go for it, man. Make Joe Sack happy.
I was really pleasantly surprised. Whenever the new cumulative update comes out, we have a laughing joke fest in the company chat room, laughing at all the bugs. And I was reading down that list in CU2, and I'm like, that's reasonable. That's reasonable. There's some stuff with memory optimized tables, but I'm like, who uses that anyway?
Yeah, I'm like, I could see how someone would miss that. That's fine with me. Like, there wasn't anything just like that outlandish, like, like what was one recently? It's like updating a column store index causes corruption. I'm like, well, no. I mean, you shouldn't be updating a column store index anyway. That's the wrong way to do it. But holy cow, someone was like, no.
God. And you in the old days, they would put incorrect results in the title of the hotfix. They would say incorrect results when you do whatever. These days, they try to hide the words incorrect results and they put them somewhere else. They're just like, results issue or unreliable
The query
join.
may surprise you.
Results not as expected. Thomas says, thank you very much for the sale on the everything bundle. You're welcome. Our pleasure. We have a lot of fun with Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
You know, Brent asked me to put a price on my videos, and I said basically free sounds about it.
Yeah, $1.99. I said, well, we got to make something, so let's make it $3.99.
I'm not paying that much for an app. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Oh man. Wow. It's amazing that what the differences in what people expect to pay for things.
And you know what else is really funny is the psychology is if you make an app cost more, people are more likely to buy it because they think they're getting more. If you're just like, I was like, oh, 99 cents for what? I don't.
It's got to be garbage.
Yeah. For like $10, you're like, oh, I'm going to get the world from this. It's going to solve all my problems. Like,
well, I mean, look at video games, right? So you buy something for the Xbox and it's like $70, and then you say, hey, I got a game. It may not be as full featured, but you know what? You're going to enjoy it. And they're like, 99 cents? Are you kidding me? Forget that.
Like one of my old roommates used to like peruse the online stores for that, and he would find these like magical games for like $6 to $12 that he would play for like 100 hours. And you'd be like, why aren't they charging more for this? This is the best game. And then like, you'd come along to something like Skyrim, and you'd play it to its like logical conclusion, but it cost you like 60,
$30.
You played probably, about what the game studio expected, whereas these other games, you play them for a little bit, and you're like, wow, this is great.
I'm still going on with Hitman. That's still the only game that I play. Is Hitman. Wow. It's Hitman and what's the disease one? Begins the disease.
Pandemic.
Pandemic. Yeah.
Okay. I don't. Yeah. Pandemic is a board game to me. I don't like. It doesn't so much like click as a video game,
Oh, it's so good as a video game because you don't have to worry about setting things out or whatever. You can play it yourself on the plane. It's magical.
Yeah, but that's half the fun, Brent.
I don't like people. So
well, we know that.
Also, board games plus turbulence. No.
And booze on the table. I mean, I spill my booze on the game.
How are we going to keep the drinks?
Scott says, yesterday our TempDB transaction log filled. This sounds like the start of a wonderful novel. Filled to the size of our drive. We didn't have any logging in place to monitor the size of TempDB, and I'm trying to find out what happened. We don't know if it happened all at once or if it was progressively getting larger. Any ideas? I have an idea. Buy a monitoring app. But no, go ahead, Eric. You look like you were going to say something.
Oh, I mean, I have a stupid blog post about monitoring the TempDB with extended events. If you want to head up, I'll pick that up.
Let's see here. Let's open up a web browser. Who knows what we're going to find? So, Eric, darling, TempDB extended events.
Extends what?
Picture of what? So, tracking TempDB growth using extended events. Yeah, there we go. That works. I'm such a huge fan of getting a monitoring package off the shelf. It's like $1,000. Let me tell you what happens if you don't. If you go and build your own monitoring tool right now and you go, oh, I'm going to write something so that I never get caught by surprise by TempDB filling up again, all you're doing is monitoring for that one thing. 2 weeks from now, your server's going to break for another reason. You're going to be like, oh, no, who could have possibly guessed that? We would have had corruption in production. I'll go add something to the monitoring tool for that. So you're always behind the 8 ball. Just start making suggestions to your boss that, hey, if this is important, let's go get a monitoring tool. But in the meantime, I'm such a huge fan of this.
Because, the thing with extended events is like everyone wants to pawn it off as like a replacement for Profile or for monitoring of other kind. But there's 1.5 billion events, and you really have to pick and choose which ones you want to monitor and which one and like how you're going to get that data from and how you're going to alert on that. Right now, there's not an easy way to get alerts from extended events. Like if you set up an extended event session and you wait for some threshold to be passed, there's not a great way for you to like get an email when something happens. You have to like look at it later. So it's a pretty good way to like persist like a forensic trail of stuff that you want to look at. But really, just a monitoring tool is so much handier, and for the price it costs, it's so much less work.
Let's see. Wes says, as a developer DBA, is it worthwhile to learn PowerShell or C#? Oh.
I'd say
Okay.
C sharp.
Yeah.
Why would you say?
Because
We'll both
CLR is at
agree.
least
Yeah.
sure. So for me, if you said, Eric, go learn a language that's going to help you with SQL Server, I would choose C sharp because learning C++ is no good because I can't get to the source code. So C sharp is okay because you could at least make yourself useful writing some like cool, aggregate functions in CLR and applying those at like stuff that SQL Server can't do, using regex in a more useful way than, like or pad index or car index. So I would say C sharp for that. PowerShell, I think that's to me, that's more of like the Robert Davis style infrastructure production DBA gig, because that's where you're using PowerShell to do something across multiple servers and work all that stuff out with the automation.
Okay. Can database developer speak now?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's C sharp, and there's other languages like Python and possibly even now R that could be thrown into that mix now. But for SQL Server, you're probably talking C sharp. And the reason why you want to do something that's more programmatic is because you're going to get to a point as a database developer where you're going to have to process data that SQL Server really can't do very easily. You're going to want to put that out there and process it, inside of some sort of application and then put it back into the database. C sharp is great for that. It's got a very rich, deep, well-documented language. You have a lot of add-ins and code that's already out there. You can grab it from NuGet, bring it in there. The unit testing is phenomenal. Try to do that with T-SQL suckers.
Or PowerShell.
Yeah, exactly. So I've actually done this with a client of mine before I came here to Brent, Ozar. I was processing, it was something like, it was close to 1 billion records or something like that. I did all that in C sharp. I wrote unit tests for it and it was all this business logic that needed to get through. So when I left, I just handed it off to someone and said, hey, if you need to, change something, make sure the unit tests run. And there was no problem. I mean, with the handoff, I never got a phone call about, hey, this app doesn't work anymore.
Because you changed your phone number.
Yeah, well, that too. That kind of helps.
Witness protection, right?
But the other thing you want to know C sharp first is because you'll start to know the .NET framework. And if you know the .NET framework, PowerShell becomes so much easier because you start seeing, oh, look, it was built on the .NET framework. Oh, I understand what this does. So I would definitely go the C sharpy route. But yeah, some of the other languages like Python, they should get a nod too.
I think of it as a fork in the road. Do you want to get closer to the developers or do you want to get closer to the sysadmins? If you want to get closer to sysadmins, someone could make an argument that PowerShell is better, but even there, I'm going to say C sharp is better because it's going to make you so much stronger and more valuable to go build apps, things that'll help you with your systems administration. I get it. The PowerShell crowd is totally strong, and it's not a crappy language. It's a great language to go learn, but you either want to get closer to the sysadmins or the developers. And if you want to get closer to developers, I would strongly say C sharp.
Yeah. I mean, just for me, the value of C sharp would be like if I had to hand off like something that does a thing to servers to people, and I could say, run this exe and this stuff will happen and you can see it here, rather than right-click on this PowerShell script and over here. And then if you get errors and you have to do this and that, like if you could build something graphical where someone clicks a button, it's a whole heck of a lot easier than like, go to this network drive and run this script.
Especially since you said you're going to be a dev DBA. If you're going to be a dev DBA, you're going to be surrounded by other developers.
Yep.
Two, we should say, because the PowerShell people are going to read this transcript and they're going to be foaming at the mouth because they're really strongly opinionated people. It's not a bad language to learn. It won't make your career less valuable, but we're just talking about the specific focus of someone who said they wanted to be a development DBA.
Yeah, and for me, I like to stay right in the middle of all that mess, right? So right between DBA and development. So unfortunately, I have to learn both of that crap. Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. It's like a Larry Moe and Curly kind of thing. Was it Shemp that did that? Forrest asks, what weight stats and other metrics would I expect to see on a VM with noisy neighbors? All of them.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just that means that you have less capabilities for either CPU memory, network storage, whatever. It could be absolutely anything.
What I would pay close attention to there is if you run a fantastic free tool like SP Blitz first, that'll go in and grab your weight stats for you. I would want to look at long average weights on stuff. I wouldn't necessarily look at a lot of single weights for like the total number of hours and the total number of weights might be sort of indicative, but having long weights on stuff, specifically around CPUs and memory, would be the stuff that I would focus on. Because if you have long average weights on CX packet, that means something is draining your CPUs. And if you have long average weights on SOS schedule yield, then your queries are waiting a long time to get back on a CPU. So it would just kind of indicate to me that SQL is having a tough time getting those resources and handing them off to queries.
Somebody's going to say, what does long mean? So if I said, what's a long CX packet or SOS scheduler yield, what would you say? I'm going to make numbers up.
On average, I would probably say anything over 10 seconds. To me, that's because 4 milliseconds is the quantum for SOS scheduler
10
yield.
milliseconds, you mean? 10 milliseconds, not 10 seconds.
10 milliseconds, sorry.
Yeah. Woo! It's like, holy hell.
Yeah, well, I have seen 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
Yeah, because so for SOS scheduler yield, queries step on and step off. It's cooperative. It happens in 4 millisecond doses that a query gets a CPU time. So if it's stepping off for twice as long as it takes for it to get CPU time, then I'm concerned.
Let's see here. Brandon says, I have to say that I love your training videos. You don't have to say that. It's appreciated.
No,
this is a reliable. You like Eric's, you don't like mine. That's cool.
I can handle the truth.
He says they're reliable, accurate. Now I know he's not talking about ours. And they have the.
Did you just buy them cheap? You don't have to.
And you should have to know, we've talked about this in the company chat room. We have collectors. We have people who just buy our videos and then they don't actually watch them. So good job on watching them. That's the key to actually learning. Just having them on the shelf, that doesn't help so much. Greg says, I'm seeing I/O completion weights. My disk average read and write times and queue lengths are all within reasonable baselines. I did see page life expectancy drops. If I'm seeing I/O completion weights, what should I be looking at now?
Oh, it took me a while to find the question. It was like hidden amongst the leaves. You can start talking while I read. Come on.
I/O completion, usually I would go towards TempDB. So it's like queries that are spilling to disk because they can't get enough query workspace. SP Blitz Cache has a sort by memory grant. So run SP Blitz Cache with sort order equals memory grant. Look for queries that are getting, this is going to sound counterintuitive, a large memory grant, because I'm wondering if they're still not spilling to disk even after they get a large memory grant. We don't have a sort for low memory grants that are spilling to disk. I don't think that there's an easy way to do that. I don't know how I would catch that without a monitoring tool, come to think of it. That's all I got.
Stuff spilling, there are extended events for that.
Oh, ooh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
but I would start there.
Yeah, sure. I concur.
Thomas asks, would SP Blitz and SP Blitz Index help for identifying performance improvements for SAP B1? You guys, were you on the one that was doing an SAP Business One?
That was terrible. I've had SAP Business One clients before. Far and away, the most common problem with SAP One is blocking, and turning on read committed snapshot isolation is usually a big enough improvement where you don't have to go messing around with too much other stuff. Most SAP products are engineered to work on Oracle and DB2, which use optimistic locking by default. So turning RCSI on for those is, pretty much what solves the SQL Server problem.
I like it. Daryl says, I was on Erik's stats page yesterday, and it was awesome to see that you guys had totally missed example D nulls for OLA stats. He's talking about Erik's recent blog post about why to reorganize or rebuild indexes, I think. I'm not 100% sure. He says there was a group buy by Brent on index maintenance. Yeah, if you go to groupbuy.org, groupbuy.org, not group purchase, groupbuy.org, and click watch past session at the top, you can watch all the past videos there. He says, there was a great comment that said Brent Ozar and Paul Randall need to get together and explain why we disagree. We actually agree. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing is that Paul and I both agree that it can be a problem. It's just that I want you to prioritize and make sure you're focusing on your biggest problem first. That's why I go through and talk about weight stats in there. Paul and I are good friends. We talk all the time. He would agree that you need to focus on your top weight type first. He's educating you on a problem and how you go about fixing it. It's just that I want to make sure you're focused on the top problem first. Most of the time when I end up, let's be honest, looking at y'all's indexes, you don't have any indexes. And when we talk about fragmentation, I'm like, dude, fragmentation is the least of your problems. Meet Mr. Index. Joe says, to me, PowerShell is in a tweener. I'm not exactly sure what he means there. He says,
sounds dirty.
Yeah, I don't think I was Google.
Sounds like something you pay extra for in Vegas. I don't know.
He says it's too cumbersome to replace the old NT shell, and it's not got sufficient tooling to replace C#.
It's never going to replace C#. Don't kid yourself. It's not designed to replace C#.
Even if it had great tooling.
No. Yeah. It's to me it's an administrative plugin. You know, it's like it's an admin language. It's, you know, if you need to, you know, like automate stuff for a failover cluster, bingo bango. If you need to, you know, because it has all that stuff built in, and that's cool that it can do that. But really, replace C#.
Yeah, no, it's not designed to do that. It's not supposed to do that. It's a shell scripting language. I mean, at this point, do I need to start calling PowerShell folks script kiddies, because essentially that's what they're turning into.
Now, we have to be fair, though, before you get too excited and drop the microphone. What language do you spend most of your time programming in these days?
JavaScript.
Which is not really designed to do what we're doing with it.
Well, not what it was. Well, it was designed in 6 weeks, Brent. What can you really design in 6 weeks? I mean, seriously, it had the same amount of time that the Atari game did. Okay. But there's things that we could do with JavaScript that makes it a little bit better. Would I rather be using C#? Yeah, heck yeah, man. There's a lot of thought been put into C#, or Python or some other language like that. But does it do their job, and it has a lot of people using it, and it has a huge community in it? Yeah, heck yeah. I'm not one of these guys that says JavaScript is garbage, is terrible. But yeah, there's issues in it. You just have to understand those issues and kind of move on from that. And there's plenty of stuff in my code where it says stupid JavaScript hack.
Is there anything in your code that says intelligent JavaScript hack?
No, there's nowhere where it says that. There's some things that says situation nominal all fouled up. I did see that in there today. I'm like, oh, I did put that in there. All right, very good.
Oh, geez.
So I want to ask you the programmer bait question. Would you go straight to C#, or is there like a linguistic progression you would make to get to a point where you're a good enough programmer where learning C# would be easy? Would you go like the Python C# route, or like the JavaScript Python C# route, or how, like if you were a beginning programmer today, what would you do?
I don't think the language really matters. It's understanding the fundamentals of development and of programming that really makes a good developer what it is. The language is just a tool. The thought process and understanding the basics is really what's important. So whatever language you use is whatever. I mean, I've seen some really great COBOL programmers that they're not using object-oriented at all. It's just all top-down stuff. So it's the thought process. It's understanding how to get in there and what makes things work from a programmatic perspective, and understanding the basics is really the key. There was a book that I used to read like every year called The Object-Oriented Thought Process, and it's just so I could hammer the basics into my head every year. And okay, this is how you build object-oriented stuff. Nowadays in modern programming, we don't really do object-oriented so much anymore. It's more functional programming than it is object-oriented stuff. We don't really tie ourselves to those or object-oriented paradigms, but and that's a lot because of our toolings. We can't get to things, and so we can test them and things like that. So that's a lot more deeper than I probably should have gone into database office hours stuff. But
it's a good question.
bye, everybody.
The big takeaway there is learn Visual Basic.
Yeah.
Hey, Visual Basic worked in a lot of different ways and for a lot of years. And, you know, a byproduct of learning Visual Basic is that you learn a .NET framework. And you could go from .NET framework to F# to C# and a whole bunch of other languages that use the .NET framework. So there's nothing really wrong with I see with Visual Basic. It's a little lengthy to type out, but, you know, I jumped from VB to C# without even blinking an eye. And it's just a matter of, well, how would I do this? And just from a syntax perspective.
What's that joke? What's that? What does C# have that F# will never have? Jobs.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Colin says, has anyone noticed, or he says, I have noticed a significant decline in jobs when searching SQL Server DBA on Indeed.com over the past 2 years. I know this is a sensitive subject. Can you speak to why that is happening?
The cloud, maybe.
The cloud. I haven't noticed that, but I haven't searched. So
yeah.
I would say, what is it that you're worried about? If you're worried about like having a future or something, you don't need a lot of jobs. You just need one. And to get the really good one, you need to know a company. So you build out your networking and know people, and then that finds the next job that you want. If you're worried about finding a job from a stranger out on a recruiting forum, dude, you're doomed. A lot of companies just don't want to hire DBAs because they're expensive. They're really hunkin' expensive. They're hard to replace. They're niche people.
They drink too much.
Yeah. So a lot of shops are trying to use remote DBA services that tried for a while. So, but I wouldn't read too much into that. Let's see here. James Yukana said, the great Argenis Fernandez told me to change your job to data engineer. Oh, sure. DevOps, data reliability engineer. Yeah, you name it.
You know, the other thing is that our free scripts are so good, people are finding they don't need DBAs anymore. They just run the scripts and they can use it.
Sure. The system is self-tuning ever since SQL Server 7. It just tunes itself.
Yeah. I didn't want to say it, but, you know, we're all just getting replaced by the robots.
Robots. Joe follows up. He says, I didn't ask my question well. He said, if I'm in a command line, PowerShell is too cumbersome and I hate it. But if I'm writing a tool or automation, why wouldn't I just go to C#? I guess I haven't found the time to reach for the PowerShell instead of just going to C#.
You go to C#.
If you know C#, just go to C#.
Yeah.
And then the last question we'll take, Ronnie asks, have any of you guys played with SQL Operations Studio? If so, what do you think about it? Am I the only one who... Yeah, I'm the only one. So I played with it because I'm passionately excited about it. I use a Mac. I'm all about a Mac. If I could do some stuff just inside the Mac, I would love it. It's pretty. That's cool. It has one big, huge problem, which is it doesn't show actual execution plans graphically right now. It just so happens that that's my job, is tuning query plans, basically, so that doesn't work too well for me. The other big problem that I have for it is it's licensed under the source license by Microsoft, which means you can contribute code, but it's the Hotel California. You can never get your code back out. You can't compile this thing and distribute it out to other people. So if we wanted to check our own code in, we can do that, but then we can only compile it on our own desktops. We can't even give it out to somebody else. So there's a GitHub issue to get them to change it to the MIT license, the same way that Visual Studio Code is licensed. I have high hopes for that. If they fix the actual execution plans and fix the MIT or switch to the MIT license, I'm going to be the world's biggest evangelist of that thing.
And you should actually show that on the screen, that GitHub issue, so people can go click the thumbs up on it.
There we go.
That's what gets GitHub issues.
Let's see. SQL Operations Studio GitHub issues. Then let's go into the search. So in GitHub, if you haven't used GitHub before, you click over on the Issues tab, type in license.
Spell it right.
Spell it correctly. And there's this issue, a more permissive license, in which we lay out the reasons why this is kind of a big deal. It's got 29 upvotes now. It would be cool if we could get more on there. So, and I'll blog about that too coming up. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us at this office hours, and we will see y'all next week. Adios.